Hey guys, King of Charmander here. Today I will be your judge, your jury, and your analyst. And as you saw there, that is my clip from my top 5 because I really do believe that is an amazing clip. That is from an anime called Your Mom, Do You Love Your Mom and her like 2-hit techniques. It's freaking hilarious, but it's actually a really decently good anime, and it's perfect because that scene is basically off of it's basically like kind of like a video game kind of anime. And in that video game they actually ban like the entire they ban like an entire system with that one episode. Unlike Niantic, where they only banned the top 20 for some odd reason, and top picks like Hypno and Sableye are ruled out, which is just really nuts. If you watch my top 5 teams, I truly believe that Niantic should have banned at least the top 50 or 100, but anyways, it's not like they do any work anyways, or at least they try hard to make sure that their game is much better than anything else. They're just here to take our money and our time. However, if you are wanting to spend that time to make Legend for the first time, I give to you my top 5 budget picks for the Great League Remix. Today I'll be your judge, your jury, and your analyst once more, and man, this cup's kind of so like the old Great League Remix was kind of great, just because like a top 10, just because a lot of like core picks or like budget picks, like I would say like Altaria, weren't banned. Altaria was still out there, you could still use things like Vigoroth, etc., but unfortunately those Pokemon aren't available, and we are stuck with this list. And the rankings for it are actually very interesting. So as I always say, please consider contributing to PewPoke.com. Again, Great League Remix is really weird. They had a pre-release instead of before, where I guess Niantic got more lazier than they were, and they really didn't want to just look up how many people used the top 20 or whatnot, or additional, like any additional work. Instead, they just like, alright, you know, these are the 20 most popular, let's just ban them. So they pre-banned everything, and instead of doing what they did before, and actually like put some work in. Then again, they did ban Cantoni and Raichu, so can we really say, well, this was the first time around, so can we really say Niantic really did any work? Anyways, as I mentioned before, these are my top 5 budget picks. It was a little rough to do this, so I did a little more time to do this video, and I did a little more research as well as sims, just to make sure that these teams were pretty solid for the Great League Remix. Anyways, let's get started. I forgot to mention these teams don't have legendaries, so I can't exactly give, well, there's actually a team here where each second moves 10k dust. I'll get to that in a bit. However, again, I forgot to mention that none of these teams have legendaries. So this team is a budget team. By the sheer virtue, you're not going to have any Crystalias, Registeels, Mews, etc. This is a budget team list, and therefore we shall be all budget. Well, as you see here, we have Froslass, Rainy Cast from Safe Switch, and Stunfisk as your closer. Very pressure-heavy team. You might have had Froslass from before. This is a regular Stunfisk instead of Galarian Stunfisk. G-Fisk was banned, but the regular Stunfisk is still allowed. As you see here, it has a C for coverage, but you'll see why. I'll describe that in a sec. But it has great bulk safety and amazing consistency as far as damage. This team does a ton of damage, and you'll be surprised just how good Rainy Castform is as a safe switch in this cup. You can thunder your way through you can thunder through if you are able to hit a thunder on a Jellicent or one of whatever resists are like water switches, which is basically Jellicent for the most part. You hit a thunder on a Jellicent, you can go ahead and water gun and weather ball down. So Rainy Castform is a scary good safe switch in this meta. As you see here, this team does very, very good against a lot of things. Diggersby does fall to both Rainy Castform and Froslass, so you have that double coverage against Diggersby. If you get a Registeel lead or something like that, you can choose to sack Froslass, but I do recommend you just safe switch in the Rainy Castform. This is what we have Stunfisk for. Switch in Castform, hopefully we can win switch, and then Stunfisk goes in the back. Other than that, Froslass with the shield advantage or energy advantage is incredibly powerful. If you played it before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It does really well in this meta. Now, the reason why you have a C for coverage is because of what you're weak against. As you see here, your biggest things that you're weak against is Lickitung XL, which can still be really good in this meta. The reason why Lickitung XL is, even though it's a top pick, really falls off a lot is because Lickitung XL, there's a lot of normal types here, like Diggersby XL, that are really, really good. You also have things like Registeel. Registeel does pretty much wall Lickitung as far as Charizard goes. It doesn't wall Lick, but it threatens heavily with Focus Blast. So Lickitung, as good as it is overall, doesn't have a lot of like sustainability. Froslass can still like Froslass with shield advantage can still avalanche its way through shields. Froslass doesn't have, well, I think Froslass has Blizzard, but mostly, you know, avalanche is the standard move, so you're just gonna drop a bunch of ice cubes. Well, not really ice cubes, they're more like, you know, if you've ever watched the movie Titanic, you know, giant icebergs, basically that's what an avalanche is. Or even worse. Well, technically the Titanic was worse, because a lot of people died, and we don't, yeah. Dang, that was a really long time ago. Anyways, as you see here, a lot of weaknesses that you go against you're not really going to see them a lot. For example, you're not going to see a lot of Shiftry. You won't see a lot of Roserade. You won't see a lot of Fortress. Dragonair, not really because of Abomasnow and Froslass. The biggest thing you might see is probably Lickitung. Other than that, this team is incredibly powerful. You have the option of running through your opponent with Froslass. Froslass outright, just like catching those Digger's Bees. Froslass also has a great matchup against things like Abomasnow, etc. And of course, Froslass does so much damage, it gives you a lot. There's a lot of shield pressure. High on the threat score, but like I mentioned, a lot of your weaknesses, you're not going to see a lot. Except for Lickitung XL, and that's a maybe because Lickitung must be XL. But great budget teams. All three of these mons have been out for a while. So unless you're brand new to the game and you literally don't have a Rainy Cast form, you should have a Froslass or Stunfisk, but like there are other teams here you can use as well. Alright, next up we got Serperior, Snorlax, and Froslass. Serperior lead with Leaf Tornado. Serperior with Leaf Tornado is basically overpowered because Leaf Tornado is like an Octazooka. If you hit it, you have a 50% chance of debuffing -2. That's overpowered. And if you do get it, say if you win the lead versus something like a Digger's Bee, then they switch in whatever into you could choose to switch out into either Froslass or Snorlax. Both have great safe switch coverage, which is why this is essentially a double safe switch team. Or you could be a real douche and just throw a Leaf Tornado, pray you get the debuff, and if you do that, whatever's inside is going to, or whatever comes into you, Snorlax and Froslass is going to have a great time. Snorlax can take switch against a Registeel, so if you're able to get double superpower, or if you want to, you can also choose to not use superpower. You can choose to switch it to Earthquake. Totally up to you. But Snorlax with superpower does very well in this meta. You can double up against a Registeel and possibly take back switch, depending on how the match goes. This team has a C for coverage, C for bulk, great safety, and great consistency. Now, even though it has a C for bulk and consistency, C is only because Froslass is in your team. Froslass isn't bulky. C for coverage also because if you look at all of it, compared to a lot of other like really high coverage mons like Registeel or like Cresselia, when you don't have legendaries, you're gonna sack coverage. But it's okay, I got you. As you see, this team does insanely well against a lot of meta combinations. As far as your weaknesses goes, the reason why, even though you have a high threat score, you're not going to see a lot of Ninetales, Cast Forms, Fortress, Charizard, Blaziken, Articuno, Roserade, Honchkrows. In other words, everything that core breaks this team is really weird, and you aren't going to likely encounter them. That's why, even though this team has a high threat score, it's still insanely powerful. Fire types can give you an issue, like, of course, because of Ninetales and Snorlax, etc. However, so they still do heavy damage, and like I said, you're not likely to see fire types in this meta. Not, like, most of the time. Mostly because things like Jealous Scent, there's a lot of things that cover fire types in this meta, so they're not the strongest things in the world, so this team basically says, hey, I don't like being lit on fire. Please don't light me on fire like the Titanic, so that, well, technically the Titanic wasn't lit on fire. It hit an ice, well, technically it was. Well, it sank. So it hit an iceberg and then it sank. So hopefully, as long as you don't see a fire type, your ship won't ship like the Titanic in the Great League Remix with this budget team. Alright, so do you love Machamp? Do you love Goro? Have you played Mortal Kombat? It's a fantastic game. And if you watch like an anime like One Piece, you know, you have Zoro. It has like Azura. Well, if you know it and you've made it to like episode 900 because you know One Piece has a bajillion episodes, then you know what I'm talking about. However, we have Machamp. So if you like Machamp, Machamp is great in this meta. I have a Shadow Champ here. You don't need to use Shadow Champ. You could use regular one. I've tested both and both do fine. This is Jealous Scent, Safe Switch, and then Abomasnow closes out. Some scenarios you will have to throw in Abomasnow, so here's a low-key fact. Against a Cresselia with Grass Knot can actually take switch against Jealous Scent, so it's kind of risky to throw Jealous Scent in there. But Jealous Scent is a fantastic safe switch regardless. And again, Abomasnow has so much high pressure. If you look, this team has this thing has amazing coverage. This is a budget team where I managed to find an A for coverage, and it's actually pretty dang good. However, because you do have a Machamp in your team, basically that's what pretty much sacrifices all the bulk. Abomasnow also isn't particularly bulky, that's why bulk is at a D. However, this team does have great safety as well as great consistency. Very powerful against the overall meta. Extremely powerful. So, again, A for coverage means this team has a really low threat score. You actually don't have a team that are like, there's not one mon that like core breaks this entire team. Wigglytuff can be an issue just because, of course, it has the normal type, so Jellicent does have an issue against Wigglytuff. However, you can Bubble Beam it to death, etc. And if you see a Wigglytuff, unfortunately, it's just probably just bad luck. Because, as you see here, Wigglytuff is probably your biggest threat. That and Pidgeot. So just normal types in general, if it's like flying or if it's like Wigglytuff, just because of Machamp. So, it's going to put you a little bit in trouble when you get Jellicent. However, hopefully, if you can, maybe Jellicent with like debuff Bubble Beams or Abomasnow is what you could straight ball out. Hopefully, Machamp has a strong matchup against the back row and you can still find win cons. But other than the mons I've mentioned, this team's incredibly powerful. Gengar can also give you an issue or just basically go safe switches, because if somehow you lose the lead, remember Sableye is still available in this meta. Sableye will lose to Machamp Shadow just because of the fact that Shadow Champ just puts so much pressure as far as damage goes. However, just be careful because Sableye is also incredibly powerful. This team does have a low threat score, however, it's also incredibly powerful, and again, this is the one team I found that has an A for coverage. The other teams here, I do believe, are really good overall. So statistically, this is the best team I could think of and practiced with. However, that doesn't mean the other teams, if you don't like how this team looks, the other budget teams of this video are just as effective, if not more effective for you than this one. Alright, so do you like zone, like Magnezone, like zoning in NBA? It's a great defensive technique, if you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, if you like sports or if you like basketball, you also like throwing wild charges, because you know, it looks like it's cool little laser beams. You like going pew pew, you know Hadouken, that's basically Magnezone in Great League Remix. Anyways, I'm gonna stop now and we're just gonna get straight to the team. As you see here, we have Magnezone, Rainy Cast Form, and Whimsicott. So Whimsicott's actually necessary in the back just because, you know, Charm 2 Shield strats are very strong, and this team is basically designed to blow your opponent's shields and have Whimsicott in the back with 2 shield. Or 2 shields for a Charmer. So, why Whimsicott over Wigglytuff? It's just because of what the team covers. Magnezone and Rainy Chasm already cover key, they already cover, key Pokemon. So, when I put this together, it recommended Whimsicott and instead of Wigglytuff. And I totally agree because Wigglytuff takes neutral damage from counter, Whimsicott doesn't. Also, Whimsicott with the grass coverage also is able to give you a chance against those Mudshot users because guess what? You have Magnezone is weak to Mudshot users. Rainy Castform goes well against a lot of them, which is why it's our safe switch, but Whimsicott just covers a lot of what Magnezone pretty much dies to. But Magnezone is mighty in its own right. You can break shields with Wild Charge, Rainy Castform is your safe switch, and Whimsicott is just two shield charm, basically. Whimsicott does, however, DU for bulk, and so does Magnezone, because both of those aren't very bulky. However, this team does have great coverage, safety, and consistency. As you see here, your biggest nightmare will probably be Diggersby. Diggersby's Fire Punch actually doesn't do, it hurts against Whimsicott, but you need a lot to take out Whimsicott. So, we're really trying to figure out Diggersby here. Or really trying to, make sure that we have answers against Diggersby right here. As you see, Registeel can also give you an issue for this team. Registeel, basically, here's what happens. You Wild Charge and Registeel shields, and then you come in with Rainy Cast from the farm. So, Magnezone's your shield breaker, and then we try to save Whimsicott with shields, as you see here. And Magnezone's really good in this cup. It's one of the top leads for a reason, just because of its ability to base... Wild Charge hurts a lot if you don't see a ground type in the lead, and it's basically... Just be careful. Ground is actually very, ground, Diggersby, of course, but however, again, the reasons of having Rainy Castform and Whimsicott in your team. And as you see here, the reason why it does so well is because you don't encounter a lot of your weaknesses. As you see here, you might see, Hypno's probably the biggest thing you'll see here. In the 2 shield, Hypno with Fire Punch is kind of rough. But as you see here, Chansey, Melmetal, Parasect. Your those aren't very likely. Or at least you're not gonna, you can probably see them, but they're not gonna be very likely. The things that's gonna give you a biggest concern, like I mentioned before, are your ground types, Diggersby and Whiscash. Rainy Castform and Whimsicott can 2-shield their way to victory against both of them, however, just be very careful. Also, make sure you be careful about Registeel's Focus Blast. Flash Cannon and Focus Blast only have a 1 lock-on difference. So if you feel like you jacked up and they got 1 lock-on through, don't try to be a hero and just shield, okay? But basically, well, that's how you play Magnezone. If you feel like you're in danger, shield, break both shields with Magnezone, sack Magnezone, and then come out with Rainy Castform and Whimsicott. Unless you see a ground type, then safe switch, and then you'll be perfectly fine. As you see here, this team has a high threat score, but like I mentioned before, I gave you like the key. I already gave you like the big weaknesses to look out for. But this team will do very, very well. It's very, very like skill heavy just because of Magnezone. Also because Magnezone Great League isn't as bulky as it is in Ultra League. So you're gonna have to be really fancy with Magnezone. But if you like Magnezone, this team's for you. And the cheapest budget team I could think of. Literally, all of these mons only cost 10 cube dust for their second move. And I was really skeptical about it working, but it actually does insanely well. This is Charizard as your lead. It's the Fire Spin Blast Burn one. So here's the interesting thing about Charizard. Charizard has a great matchup against Diggersby. It also beats Registeel. And it's really, really flexible. So again, Fire Spin Charizard is really freaking good. Mainly because of the targets that it targets mainly for the reason it beats Diggersby and it also beats Registeel. So Charizard is really powerful with Fire Spin. Fire Spin also fries through Abomasnows. And also you have a, like, Fire Spin basically is super effective against basically every other steel archetype here, because you could still see things like Jirachi, Bronzong, Melmetal. If you see a Melmetal, you probably want to run, but other than that, it still has a very strong matchup against a majority of the steel typings. Obstagoon's your safe switch, Whiscash is your closer. Now, this Obstagoon actually has Hyper Beam, so you don't actually really need Cross Chop with Obstagoon. If you see a Registeel, Night Slash and Cross Chop do the damage is so minuscule, you might as well go for the boost anyways. Of course, Obstagoon with the boost is just as powerful as it is in any league, and it still holds true for the Great League Remix. Again, Charizard lead, Obstagoon safe switch, and Whiscash to close out. Also, Hyper Beam does a huge amount of damage. If you encounter a Mandibuzz, Hyper Beam will do enough damage for you to be able to Night Slash or counter down, depending on if Obstagoon's boosted or not. You have a C for coverage and C for bulk, however, you are great safety and consistency. Obstagoon also does really well against a lot of safe switches that use ghost type attacks like Sableye and of course Jellicent. So that's why it's just really freaking good. All three of these Pokemon also kill Diggersby. As you see here, Diggersby does fall to all three of these Pokemon. So basically it's a kill Diggersby team. Literally. Also, I forgot to mention, Charizard also does really well against Cresselia, just because Cresselia isn't likely carrying Future Sight. It also does well against things like, I already mentioned Abomasnow, Machamp. Of course, because it's a fire type, it does resist Charmers, so things like Wigglytuff as well as Whimsicott will be resisted, and Charizard will just burn through them. So Charizard's actually really, really good for this cup. As you see here, the biggest thing that will give you a hard time, or just rather the biggest type, is just water types. As you see here, the things that core break this team: Rainy Castform, Mantine, Alola, Obstagoon, and Whiscash do well against all of your combinations, against all these combinations, except for Mantine. When I practiced against it, Mantine's a little rough because you have to, you're gonna essentially have to Hyper Beam or Blizzard away to victory. So just keep that in mind. Other than that, again, your biggest weakness is basically water types. I have practiced against them and I've won against them a lot, so they're beatable. It's just gonna be a little rough on your side, especially if it's like Rainy Castform, because you're like, oh, water gun, switch out immediately. So as you see, high threat score, however, it's just one, it pretty much uses one of my strategies where pray you don't see this one type in the lead and you'll be perfectly fine. And, well, for the most part, there's still win cons like I mentioned against all these mons. It's just you're going to have a little rough, it's going to be a little rough to play out of them. And that's GG's. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I actually practiced a lot with these teams. I was really iffy about Great League Remix because Pokemon like Registeel, Diggersby XL are basically anything that's basically super expensive is really freaking good. You can expect to see a lot of Registeels in this meta because it's that good, and a lot of these teams that I have basically target make sure You have a counter against Registeel, you have an optimal, like, you have something again to take it out. But again, Registeel is going to be here a lot. Also very expensive Pokemon just because they're really that good. Sableye also wasn't banned. So other like super Metamons like Hypno and Sableye, you can expect to see those as well. I did practice and sim with a lot of them with all these teams. And I was able to win against all of them. So it's really just, there's a way to win, but it's just going to be rough like I mentioned. I hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully you are close to Legend. Hopefully you are reaching your goals and you are climbing steadily. If you could do me a huge favor, this video took a while. I did a lot of research to make sure that these budget teams are actually good and can win consistently, and they all did, for the most part. Outside of getting hard countered, of course, because, you know, Go Battle League is blind rock, paper, scissors. However, you could do me a huge favor. Please like and subscribe. It's totally free, and you can easily subscribe. You see that little box at the bottom right? All you have to do is put your mouse over it, and it will easily pop up the sub tab. I really appreciate my subscribers. If you're already subscribed, I really do appreciate you. And again, liking and subscribing is free, and it will really help my goal out for 3K subs by the end of the year. Again, good luck on your guys' Go Battle League sets. I'll be putting out more Great League Remix content until it comes out, and I will see you guys on the next video.